Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me today. I'm going to continue on with my series on diet and wellness culture, food addiction, and eating disorders. Specifically, this is going to be the first video in a series on eating disorders and disordered eating behavior. So, you know that as a naturopathic doctor and functional medicine practitioner, I obviously feel that diet and movement are very important for overall wellness. And I do think that food is powerful as a pleasurable medicine, which supplies the body and brain with nourishment and sustenance to optimally function. And when the body is optimally functioning and we feel healthy, we are fueled and feel like we can live our purpose and our values and partake in our hobbies unencumbered by bodily symptoms. So, really, health can be viewed as part of this wellness continuum in which it's a means to an end, not the end result itself. And I feel in the health and the wellness space, sometimes what is considered good for us can be taken to an extreme. So, as I just stated, that diet and fitness, those are only a couple of the aspects to wellness. But diet culture's excessive focus on these and their fanatical viewpoint on food and fitness actually could potentially be contributing to disordered eating behaviors and eating disorders. If we look at the cultural, sociological, and psychological contexts and belief systems that surround food and eating behavior that it's stemming from, we can see now why so many people are struggling with what to eat, how to eat, when to eat, and if it's even time to eat, even if they feel physically hungry. Because of these messages we're getting about what we should and shouldn't do, and how we should and shouldn't feel physiologically in our own bodies by outside sources. So not only are outside sources telling us how to eat, and we're listening to these experts and internalizing that as quote healthy, it's also disconnecting the fact that we have our own internal cues of hunger, just like we do for going to the bathroom or feeling thirsty. There's a whole disconnect between that. So we can think of that and I'm not going to go deep into this video, but if we're disconnecting our bodily symptoms and our inner knowings of when to listen to our inner cues with food, think of the implications of how that affects other things later on that we're making decisions about, or what our inner guidance is telling us as far as cues to listen to in our lives in other areas. So just kind of keep that brewing in the back of your mind. I'm going to be going up against what is probably being promoted in integrative healthcare models as somewhat restrictive or responsible eating or healthy eating or fasting or intermittent fasting or any other of the popular diets that are out there. And it's not because they're innately wrong or may not work for certain people at certain times. It's because they're deemed as the one size fits all, end all be all, and trying to fit people into the diet rather than letting people decide what diet is optimal for them and their brain and their body. So it's just another example of this weight cycling diet insanity that has totally taken over healthcare, basically. And I've been educating about this because I think that we need to understand this when we're going to dive into eating disorders, because some of what's being promoted, if we look at the definition of eating disorders, is actually an eating disorder. And it's being promoted as normative and even desirable eating patterns, almost borderline orthorexia, or even to the point of food restriction. So let's dive in. I do encourage you, if you want more information, there will be a link to the article that accompanies this video in the video description. And also there will be ways to access previous videos as well as articles on the topics of food addiction, diet and wellness culture, and all of the preceding articles and videos in the series. And then there's also other videos on other more happy topics such as essential oils or mind body medicine and connections that are fun, and even things on laughter. So make sure you check that out because it's good to get a good mix. All right, so I ended last time with my three-part series. I came to the conclusion about food addiction, and I talked about the caveats with labeling food as addictive, especially that we need to determine between what is being labeled as food addictive from an eating disorder, because treating a binge eating disorder, for example, with restriction can make it worse. We need to realize there's no expert consensus or definition criteria or validated measure yet for food addiction, that there's no universal food that's considered addictive, that there isn't human trials lining up to all the theories and mechanisms proposed, that it can ignore the fact that eating disorders or quote unquote food addictive behaviors may be a coping mechanism or even be a way of self-medicating a mental health disorder. So we're not addressing the root cause, rather just band-aiding the symptom. And we have to consider the seriousness of labeling something as addictive. So are food addicts as dangerous to themselves as others, as someone that's addicted to a substance of abuse? I argue no. And then of course, being responsible, I need to point out that the DSM-5, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, that is used by the American Psychiatric Association, it's the Statistics Manual of Mental Disorders, that does not specifically have food addiction in it as a substance use disorder. Now, what I'm going to be discussing with you is DSM-5 criteria for eating disorders. So these are actually in the mental health, brain health realm here. Okay, these are actually diagnoses that are valid. They've been measured and been incorporated into practice with clinicians. Okay, so I'm gonna go first into an overview generally of eating disorders, give you some statistics, because I want you to be able to kind of recognize the gravity of the situation, because eating disorders are actually fatal if they're not treated. And we can't play around with this. And this is why I'm kind of stepping up, even though it might be unpopular in the communities, to speak about we can't be constantly advocating for not to eat with people, because I think not having enough fuel in the brain is not good for mental health. And it's also really contributing to body image issues and issues in general surrounding food and safety and what people feel is okay or not okay, because food is being moralized at this point. So this is nothing new in our society. Back in ancient times, people would purify themselves with fasting, but that was based more on spiritual beliefs, and it was done in that context. And we're kind of doing it in a context more of social acceptance and idolizing thinness, not in a spiritual approach. So let's get some facts and clarity on what is normalized and what is truly diagnosable. And I think, like I said, it's going to be eye-opening to some of you. Eating should be balanced. If it causes distress, that's your first warning sign, okay? So if you feel uncomfortable around food and you're scared of it, that's a sign, not that you have an eating disorder, but just pay attention, okay? I'm going to go through this in the series, talk a little bit more about risk factors next time so that you understand some of the connections and the causes and the triggers and mediators, because this is a complex topic. And I want you to see that when we go through these different things, why it's so complex and why it can't be addressed with a diet or just, telling people what they can eat and when they can eat, okay? So an eating disorder, according to the Mayo Clinic, is a serious condition related to persistent eating behaviors that negatively impact health, emotions, or the ability to function in different areas of your life, okay? Actually, it's all three. So the most common eating disorders are anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorder. And most eating disorders involve focusing too much on weight, too much on body shape, too much on food, and it leads to dangerous eating behaviors. Again, these behaviors impact the body's ability to get appropriate nutrition, and they can harm the heart, digestive system, bones, teeth, mouth, and lead to other diseases. So we know, for example, if we take this to the extreme that people are familiar with anorexia nervosa, when someone is that nutrient deprived, it can really put them at risk for bone health issues, heart issues, right? A lot of heart disease, heart conditions related to not getting enough nutrition. Your body needs food and those nutrients to function properly. So cutting it out and thinking that's the answers to stay thin is going to have some backlash down the road. The National Association of Eating Disorders states that eating disorders are serious but treatable mental and physical illnesses, and they affect all genders, ages, races, religions, ethnicities, and sexual orientations, body shapes, and weights. And a national survey estimates about 20 million women and 10 million men in America will have an eating disorder at some point of their life. And no one knows for sure what the causes are, but it suggests a range of biological, physiological, and sociocultural factors, which we'll go through next time. So if we look at the different categories in the DSM-5, they are anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, binge eating disorder, other specified feeding and eating disorders, pica, rumination disorder, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, unspecified feeding and eating disorder, and others, which are muscle dysmorphia and orthorexia nervosa proposed criteria. So that's the proposed criteria. It hasn't fully gotten on the DSM-5 yet. So we now see some of the characteristics or some of the general properties of eating disorders and what the basic categories are. Why do we need to know this? It's because the bottom line is you likely know someone with an eating disorder. 9 out of 100 people are officially diagnosed, but it's probably a lot higher because a lot of eating disorders behavior is normalized and it's under the radar because a lot of people can hide it pretty darn well. And another thing is many people just think of eating disorders as a binge disorder or people throwing up or people being excessively thin. And you don't have to look like you have an eating disorder to have an eating disorder. Like people with normal body sizes or larger bodies can have an eating disorder where they're not getting enough nutrition for their body and their health can suffer as a result. Many people don't know that. And 26% of those 9 out of 100 people will attempt suicide. So this is a fatal disease, one of the most fatal of all mental health conditions, and we can't not take accountability for this and make sure that we're not contributing to it, okay? So here's some more general statistics. So I said it affects at least 9% of the population worldwide. 9% or 28.8 million people will have an eating disorder in their lifetime. This is some of the more exact statistics, I should say. Less than 6% of people with eating disorders are underweight. So you can't tell if someone has an eating disorders by their weight. Less than 6% of people are actually underweight that have one. 28 to 74% of risks for eating disorders is through genetics. Okay, so there is a definite biochemical, brain health, genetic predisposition in eating disorders. Eating disorders, again, are second only to opiate overdose as the most deadliest mental health illness. Okay, 10,200 deaths each year are the direct result of an eating disorder. So that's one death every 52 minutes. So by the time about an hour or so, someone has died from an eating disorder. And 26% of people with eating disorders will attempt suicide. The economic cost, and this was from a few years back, was 64.7 billion each year. All right, so that's my general overview, kind of giving you the scene of the diet culture, the wellness culture. We kind of went through a little bit about the caveats of food addiction and the importance and gentleness and the tender topic of labeling a food addiction when it could be an eating disorder or mental health issue. And then I went through some general characteristics of eating disorders and some statistics. And we're going to go into the risk factors so that you can kind of see some of the triggers and predispositions that might be contributing to eating disorders next time. So let me just have this sit with you for a while, because I know I'm being wicked serious and I'm usually not this serious, but I can be. And when I'm passionate about something, and I would like people to take accountability, because I know for me, when I first started out in clinic, I totally was all about weight loss and diets and food and control. And, I've kind of remediated that because I saw the results and the weight cycling, and that it was just a hamster wheel of people jumping on and off and feeling bad about themselves. And I support mental health, so I didn't like what I was seeing. So just ask yourself this, and we'll see more next time. Or if the answer is definitely yes to these questions, you might really want to consider right now getting some support for yourself, okay? So is your diet or lifestyle approach negatively impacting your health, your emotions, and your ability to function in important areas of your life? This would meet the Mayo Clinic's definition of an eating disorder, and I urge you to explore this further if the answer is yes with an eating disorder expert. So if you first of all said no to the above, I want you to consider the same question. Is it negatively affecting your health, your emotions, or your ability to function in important areas of your life? Regarding one aspect is relationships. So is your eating behavior negatively in fact influencing your relationships? And are you breaking ties with support networks based on the morality of their food choices? Are you not going places because of the food that is there? Are you judging yourself and feeling bad about yourself, and it's negatively impacting your ability to function because you're hungry and you can't focus, or because you haven't eaten correctly that day, so you just aren't able to be productive? If you answered yes to this, or you're aware where it may be true for someone you care about, please don't push this aside and just normalize it, because it's being normalized right now and that's scaring me. Educate yourself and take this seriously, and ask yourself, if you're doing this for health or for an outside appearance, is this diet plan that you're on or disordered eating behavior worth giving up your relationships, your happiness, your freedom, and your self-esteem? And are we going to continue to food and body shame as a solution to the quote unquote obesity epidemic, when it just keeps getting actually where people are weight recycling and getting bigger and bigger? And I have no judgment on that. But if that's the solution to make people smaller from the health community, it hasn't worked. And it continues not to work throughout all the years. We just keep renaming the demon food and jumping on a cycle again with the next one. So I'm going to stop there because I'm definitely on a soapbox, and I hope that you will comment. I know this is a tender topic. I know that I might have stirred some things up in people, and people might totally not agree with me and think that it's all for the best and we're doing a great job by promoting that junk food is evil. And I'm not saying that we should live on junk food. I'm not saying that food quality and health does not matter for the bodies and brains. I am saying, though, that there should be choices and non-judgment around food so that we can make peace with our own inner cues and keep a kind humility in our science, that we might know a lot, but our bodies might even know more than we know at the time about what we need. Okay, so make sure you check out the references and the resources in the article. Please make sure that you also check out some of the free resources I offer on my website under the resource section, and some of the courses I offer, because I'd love to take you guys on a journey with me. And I have exciting news, because soon I will probably, hopefully within the next, over the months to in the next year, I'm going to be introducing a class where I'm going to just combine all of mind, body, heart, spirit medicine in one, and get a group together with me So I would love to have you join me for that. Love to hear if you're interested and if you have any other ideas. I thank you for joining me. I know this was kind of long, so I appreciate you and I look forward to hearing your feedback. Have a wonderful, nurturing day for yourself. Bye.